Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Sandeep Pednekar, and you're watching One Universe, the talk show based on the non-profit One Universe that fosters positivity through the promotion of love, peace, and harmony. And talking about all the good things that we promote, as our guest, we have none other than Amanda Ball with us. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being on the show. But now, for the benefit of our listeners, please introduce yourself.
Sure. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I spent probably half my childhood there. And soon after, I moved to North Mississippi after my parents divorced. And then I lived with my grandmothers.
Mhm.
And I lived with first on my mom's side of the family and then on my father's side of the family pretty quickly. And I'll mention that they are or were American Roma,
Okay.
which are known as travelers or gypsies.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own language, their own culture. Not many people really know about this culture. It's not that popular in the United States.
Mm-hmm. So definitely for our listeners who are watching from outside the US, they don't know about it at all. So you might want to tell us more about it.
Okay. Well, my grandmothers particularly were English gypsies, and that
Okay.
they are called, the way that my grandmother pronounced it was Rumley Chow, but it's spelled like Romani Chow.
Okay.
So these were English gypsies. So
Okay.
I'm of English gypsy descent, especially on my father's side.
Okay.
So the history of what people know probably as gypsies, there is, like I said before, this word is has been rather appropriated, but the original diaspora started in India. And I'm not really good with timelines, but I don't know if it was 1,000 years ago, but anyway, for some reason they moved or fled India and started moving towards Europe. And over all of those years, some ended up in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people know about the Spanish gypsies, the Gitanos. There's Eastern gypsies, and in fact, about 500,000 they calculate were even slaughtered in the Holocaust. A lot of people don't know that. So that's just a very, very quick history about gypsy Roma travelers.
Okay.
So my two grannies, where I used to travel around with them, they were settled by the time that I moved in with them in Nesbitt, Mississippi.
Okay. So I do want to pause here, and you mentioned India. So from that perspective, I would like to say I didn't know that you were a sister.
Very distant.
Right?
I did my DNA, and of course, as anyone that has done DNA
Mhm.
on Ancestry.com, you know that it constantly shifts with the more
True,
information
yeah,
that they
yeah.
get. But the last time that I looked at it, it shows that I'm 1% from India somewhere.
Wow. Wow. I mean,
So that might shift next month. Who knows? But anyway, so
good. So
yeah.
talking about the ancestry, and think about it, that when we go back into like 1,000, 2,000 years ago, what happens is that there have been now great grandfathers or great grandparents don't apply. They're like billion greats or million greats, and then that is how we have evolved. And to know that from those unique individuals, that is how you have come to be.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes you so unique. Each one of us. So we are going to talk about that uniqueness that you possess. That first of all, we as humans have so many traits that are common to us, and within us humans, there are so many things that are unique. So we are going to talk about that uniqueness, and I'm so glad you brought this ancestry. That is, you are the first in our series of interviews that we have from people all over the world. So thank you for coming on our show. And I also want to tell our listeners that we are uniquely situated at the back of the trunk of your beautiful car in Nashville.
Yeah.
You are from Memphis, and this is a unique setting that we have because we are on your farm, a beautiful farm that you have in Nashville. So we are going to talk about that, but let us go step by step as you progress through how you grew up.
Sure. Sure. So, um, yeah, it was actually a blessing to get to know my grandmothers that way, because I live with my grandmother and my great grandmother, as I mentioned before, in Nesbitt, Mississippi,
Hmm.
in a trailer park off of Highway 51.
Okay.
Um, so otherwise I wouldn't have gotten to know them that well, because I was kind of, we didn't go visit them that much when my parents were married. Um, so I got to know the language. They speak Anglo-Romani,
Hmm.
which is a mixture of English and then the Roma language. And I got to experience their cooking and all the culture.
Okay.
I could go on and on,
Hmm.
but I'll save that for another day. So, and I traveled around with them, and I will say that a lot. I mean, not so much today, but before, because they traveled around so much. At least I can speak for the American Roma. Um, a lot of them were uneducated because they did travel so much, and then they only valued education to the point that it taught them how to count. So, so my both of my grandmothers were uneducated in the sense that they couldn't read or write, but they didn't need to really.
Hmm.
I traveled. My grandmother drove, and we would drive to West Virginia, Louisiana, Oklahoma, all over the place, and she was not able to read street signs, but we knew where we were going.
Hmm.
Um, so I just wanted to mention that piece of my childhood,
Hmm.
because I think it has something to do in my DNA with one reason why I was so attracted to horses
Hmm.
from a very young age.
Wow. Okay.
So my great grandfather, I know, um, traded horses, and they used to have wagons until they got rid of the wagons and bought
Hmm.
vehicles. So, um, so when I was a child, before my parents got divorced, um, we had just a typical, not big house, but it's just a solid in a middle class neighborhood.
And how many siblings did you have?
I have two sisters, two older sisters. I'm the youngest,
Okay.
and um, so I didn't have the best childhood. And what I did and what I'm realizing now, what I did to help my nervous system regulate and to regulate, um, to regulate my nervous system, was I was very attracted. I couldn't have horses, and I'd never seen one, but I had. And I had my own little room. Um, I brought in hamsters. I had a guinea pig. I
Hmm.
had some white mice. I had parakeets. I had fish. And so I just surrounded myself within that urban environment in my little
Hmm.
room with
Wow.
animals. And we begged my parents to let us get a dog from the Memphis Animal Shelter, which used to be on Tullahoma Road.
Hmm.
And so finally, they let us after my sister and I got enough money to build a pen in the backyard for the dog. Um, let's see, and so I really couldn't be out in nature except for my backyard, and we had a couple of nice trees, and it was a pretty small backyard. But every day I would be outside, either with the dog or roller skating with the dog or riding my bike. And then I would bring, what animals they would let me bring into the house. We also had some cats. I surrounded myself, and it really did. It was like therapeutic to have the animals around me when I was in a rather often chaotic situation in the household. So at an early age, I learned what the significance was of being around animals. And it's only recently that scientific study shows how nature and animals can help regulate the nervous system.
Okay. And so you highlight how you found solace in pets, and also mention that the environment in your house was not necessarily conducive to you finding love from. So please explain that.
Well, as a child, I didn't know the difference. I just thought, oh, this is the world. This is what it is. It's only until I became an adult that I learned the difference, of course. But yeah, so let's see, what details should I tell you about that? I just didn't have a very healthy mother. And it just created a chaotic household. I'll just say that.
Okay.
And so when my parents got divorced, my middle sister and I were like, well, we would like the first opportunity to get out to the countryside. So my father said, well, okay, let's move to North Mississippi. So at first we ended up with my father, and then my father, just me and my father, ended up with my grandmothers in North Mississippi.
Okay.
After a while, after a few certain struggles with, in and out of jobs for my father. So for a while, until my parents got divorced, I had a somewhat stable house to be in, even though the dynamics in the household weren't necessarily stable. And then I started living with my grandmother, and I never really had, that room again to where I could have the animals or my pets. But it was something that was instilled in me, because that's, prior to living, not having my own room, I did. And so I was always thinking about that, or was always attracted to that. So, as I got older, fast forwarding, I graduated from Middle Tennessee State University with a degree in Spanish. And then shortly thereafter, I ended up moving to Spain.
Wow.
Because I had studied in Spain. I studied at the University of Salamanca for a summer.
Okay.
And learned Spanish. And then I was so enthralled with Spain that I wanted to go back. And so I just decided I'm going to do it. And I had a really good job at that time after I graduated, and I worked for a couple of years. Goldman Sachs and Company used to have a office in Memphis a long time ago. They since moved to Atlanta. I can't remember what year. But so I worked with them for a couple of years, and I just decided this is not who I want to be.
Okay. And what was the job about?
I was just in administration.
Okay.
Working with the sales assistants and the brokers.
Okay.
And it was pretty astonishing, even in, it was 1996, when I walked into the office for a city, Memphis, that the majority of the population is Black. I walk into the office, and it was all white males and all white females working for all white males. And I remember being astonished, even at that time. But finally, they hired one Black woman right when I left.
Okay.
So that was a good change.
Mm.
But it was working in that environment is like swimming with the sharks. It's just it's a really tough environment. It's
Mm.
probably most people would say that have worked there that don't work there anymore. Um, and I just realized that I didn't want to wake up. I was in my 20s and look at myself in the mirror when I was 40
Mm.
and say, this is who I've become. Because I had to make a choice of either staying there and getting with the program and adapting to that system and those dynamics in order to succeed in that environment. And it's just not, it just wasn't me. So I had paid off half my student loans.
Nice. Now,
Um,
Americans
yeah.
cannot do that. So that's a big achievement.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I put the rest on deferment with the government because at that time they would allow you to do that. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if they allow that anymore. Um, and then I had about $1,500 and I got on a plane pretty terrified and I left for Barcelona and I didn't know anyone in Barcelona.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I
And
just
just without a job or anything like
without
that.
a job, yeah. My
Now that
plan,
is brave and courageous. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, either that or yeah, or crazy.
yeah, it takes
So
crazy to be courageous.
yeah. So my plan was that I was going to teach English. So I had a 1 month plan that I was going to take this course for teaching English as a foreign language,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would look for a job. So I had 1 month planned out. So and so all of that, it worked out. It was really hard. Um, I guess I didn't realize that there's no economy in the world like the American economy. I mean, it's
True.
crazy. Um, or at least that I have it. I mean, I was just coming from that point of view, and I didn't realize what the economy in Europe was like and what
Mm-hmm.
jobs were like. Um, so it was really, really hard to find a living wage job in Spain. But I ended up staying there for 5.5 years. I got married. I met someone. I got married, and then I'm like, okay, let's go back to the United States because we can, find jobs that pay, and we can be a little bit more comfortable. So we did.
So that's a pretty good deal. Going there for just a month, staying there for 5.5 years, and coming back with a husband.
Yeah,
Good. Okay. Yeah.
it was a struggle. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
anyway, there's so many um, stories I could tell about that, but I won't. So that was 2003 that I moved back and came back to Memphis.
Okay.
And then I ended up getting a couple of jobs, and then finally I found a job at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and I worked there for over 14 years. And during that time, St. Jude really enabled me to have more stability with healthcare, and then be settled down a little bit more. And from there, I was able to do the personal work with a therapist that I needed to, or a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So during those years was when I got to deal with whatever it was that I needed to, with the chaotic past of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Was it bothering your then current life?
Yes.
How so?
Well, if you're not able to completely regulate your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
and you have issues like PTSD, or you disassociate at the wrong moments, things like that. It was just very disruptive, but I had adapted. But there comes a point in time in development as an adult where the past patterns don't serve you, and they
Mm-hmm.
start to get in the way.
Very true. Mm-hmm.
So those things were the things that I was focusing on so that I could move forward. And also, about a few years, maybe 2 to 4 years, once I got back, I had some childhood experience with horses. And I had a horse when I lived with another grandmother that I pretty much, that's a whole nother story too.
Mm-hmm.
But I begged to have this horse, and I had $300 of life savings and went out and got a horse, and because the neighbors would let me put it in their pasture that backed up to my other grandmother's house.
Hmm.
And I could tell you wonderful, interesting stories about all of that and my
Nice.
connections.
Very good.
Yeah, and so that further connected me to nature and horses, and I learned a lot of things from them. A lot of things that my teachers and the adults around me couldn't teach, the horses taught me, and I learned from them a lot. So when I got back to the United States, after 2 or 4 years, I can't remember, I decided, okay, I want to get back into horses. So I started like taking riding lessons or going to a barn and getting back into that. And I decided I wanted to go study with, at that time, I had read a book by a famous guy named Monty Roberts. And I decided I didn't know anything about the horse training industry. I didn't know anything at all, but I was like, I'm going to go to his ranch and study. So I kind of took out a loan and went to California and studied at his place for almost a month.
Okay.
And then I got his first certificate. So that opened up a lot of things for me and made me realize, what horse training is and what it means. And at that time, there was not really that much equine therapy per se. It wasn't that popular. It's still not. It's starting to come to be known now. It's starting to become more popular, especially with veterans and first responder groups working with equines, partnering with them for mental health reasons or therapeutic reasons. So, so after a while, I decided I'll try this coaching piece because there was coaching with horses, and so I went to get training, and then I started realizing how big this industry really is, even if a lot of people don't know about it. And so I decided that after witnessing and going through some initial training for coaching with horses, I decided I need more help with this. I need more training around integrity and ethical points about, how to really help people and not put them in a situation where I've dropped them at a cathartic place in a session and then they go home. So that kind of slingshot me to Prescott College in Arizona, where it was the only college at that time that I could find that blended clinical mental health and counseling with equine assisted mental health. So in 2021, I graduated with a degree in clinical mental health, and also it was about 15 extra graduate hours got the certification from the college in equine assisted mental health. So, and I had to quit my job at St. Jude in order to do the internships because it was really a full-time job. And I went part-time with St. Jude, and then I quit so that I could finish my degree. That part of it, I think I did around.
Well, kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you.
It is not easy.
No.
Gosh, yeah.
And the older you get, it seems it's a little harder.
Yeah, true.
So, and my initial wish is I had these experiences with horses and what they taught me, and I wanted to share that with people. And for me, experiential therapies, if it's not contraindicating, of course, for a patient or a client, it's just so it's holistic. You're including the body. It is not only just like when you sit and you talk, that's helpful for counseling. It's very helpful. And sometimes that's the necessary piece. But often we're in our cognitive brain in the front. And so to try what really helped me in therapy were utilizing these pieces, the somatic pieces, including my body in these. And that would be like moving my body and what is my nervous system doing, and am I regulated, and how do I regulate, and what does that look like, and what does dysregulation look like, and what does that mean for my emotions, and just tying it all together for intellect, emotions, body, and then a spiritual piece also.
Okay. So what I see is that when somebody evolves, there is a whole lot of different aspects from our life that bring us to the place we are. Sometimes it happens that whatever we have done in the past, we feel that, oh, gosh, I wasted my time, 2 years at college doing this and that. And then when you reach to a position, then you realize, you know what, the 2 years I thought that I wasted have actually helped me bring to this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So I think that I know that your childhood, you had not necessarily a happy thing, but it probably was given to you so that you could come to a position where you could help others.
Maybe.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah.
I won't say I'm not really into we're here to learn, because sometimes it's just like, we're here, the point is that we're here, we're in the present moment, and maybe a lot of times life just doesn't make sense at all, and that's also an accepting point.
Oh, exactly. So yeah, so at that point I would definitely like to highlight that many times we don't need to make sense. We don't need to try to figure out what was it and why it happened and how it happened. That is what life is. Life throws many curveballs at us, right? And I definitely want to say that, yeah, like every other person who has gone through all of these things, you have been, several curveballs have been thrown at you. And I definitely want to say that, I mean, congratulations are due.
Thank you.
For what you have accomplished, what you have done through all the adversities that you have gone through in life, all the situations and all of that, and you are a success.
Yes.
But we are not ending over here. So no. I want you to continue, but I definitely wanted to pause and say that what you have achieved is definitely worth appreciating.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, adverse is a good word. Adversity, adverse childhood experiences. It's a way in clinical language of measuring the situation in childhood that for measuring mental health, for reasons of mental health. But anyway, yes. So yeah, I had a lot of adverse childhood experiences. We'll just say that. So here we are. We're on this beautiful farm. There is what brought me here was, and what I've realized recently when I was talking to a childhood friend of mine, was that I've always been attracted, like even when I was in Spain, I stayed in touch with horses. I had a friend, and she would find horses in the craziest places, in sheds on the side of a highway exit.
Wow.
And they were keeping it for poop for the garden. And so I always managed to stay in touch with, even when I was in Spain. And so so here what I realized was that I wanted it to be in an urban place, because I believe that there's a big hoopla about carriage horses, for example, in the cities, and whether they should be there or not or whatnot. And I really think, now I'm not saying that I'm for or against carriage, because I carriages because I don't really know enough about that to have an
Horse
opinion.
carriage.
Yeah, horse carriages
Mhm.
in the city. But what I do know is that I think it's important to have horses in an urban environment. I think it's important to have these large animals with these huge hearts, with this big heart energy
Mhm.
around people because
Mhm.
I know how they affected and changed the trajectory of my life.
Mhm.
So, um, I won't go into the long story about how I ended up on this farm and with this farm. That's another story. But I will say that um, it kind of organically unfolded, and I've always believed that I'm lucky.
Of course you are. Yeah,
Yes,
you are blessed.
yes,
Not lucky, you are blessed.
yeah, both really. And so it was one of these things that just happened that I happened to um, have acquired this land and being able to build this farm. And like my childhood, what I realized when I was talking to my friend was that like my childhood, whereas I couldn't necessarily always be out in nature, I would bring it into my room and have these animals around me.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm doing here, but on a larger scale.
Mhm.
I'm trying to preserve this piece, this land, this little slot in Nashville, so that others can also experience nature within this urban environment and with all this development going on around here. Um, Soon the green spaces are going to start getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And I really hope to do things to attract native species and bugs and birds and animals, um, and try to keep it as green as possible and open as possible.
Mhm.
So I want to create an environment in which people can come um, and experience these experiential therapies
Mhm.
in nature-based types of therapies,
Mhm.
or education, just
Mhm.
education, just being, having your feet on the grass or stepping under the canopy of a
Mhm.
forest has also shown that it regulates and changes your nervous system in the way a person functions.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So the name of my farm is Wild Places Farm.
Mhm.
Um,
And I believe that you have been gifted uh, to provide this service for humanity. Now, I believe that where we live is our world. Where we live is our universe. We make it ours. And from that perspective, I think if I say that you have been put here to serve humanity, I'm not far off when I say humanity as such. So I think that uh, what you are doing is not necessarily what I see that others are doing. That makes you unique. That makes you so super special. And you are doing such a wonderful thing by doing this, embarking on this journey of helping humanity through nature, through all of nature. That is so special, and so are you.
no, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would like you to talk about the clinical part of what you do, and also you mentioned spirituality. You have included that spirituality also in doing good for others. So please talk about that.
Okay. Well, the clinical part, um, all I have right now is the training that I received in my internship, and
Mm-hmm.
that was quite challenging because it was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was such an interesting change. So I'm going to work towards getting my licensure for the state of Tennessee. But in the meantime, I've been working on the infrastructure for this farm first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of waiting because the pieces for the farm have seemed to come through. I've gotten a couple of grants,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to spend my time developing all of this. And I don't feel like I could do both at the same time. So, but I look forward to getting more clinical experience, and I'm sure I'm going to plug in somewhere, probably around here, around Nashville,
Okay.
to do that. So that's in the future. So the spirituality part, yeah, I see myself as spiritual, but it's hard for me to not religious. And I know people often say that, and what does that mean? But a part of the adversities that I experienced as a child was with a quite large church in Memphis, Baptist church, and so I can't really subscribe to religion per se and all the rituals and things of religion. So, but I would say that I am a spiritual person.
And of course, the reason people ask what does that mean? What's the difference, religion and spirituality, is because they really don't know. They don't get it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether, I mean, we are here in the U.S., and so we are talking about Catholicism and Baptist and this and that and so many religions and sects within that, uh, and people follow that religiously, no pun intended. But the fact is that if they are not necessarily spiritual, then that's a different journey. It's just a religious journey, and there's nothing wrong in that. But being spiritually evolved is what I also think is necessary for humankind right now.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and I've kind of, searched these ideas and especially with my grandmothers, the Gypsy Roma travelers communities, what they were based from were pagan ideas. And then that was
Yeah.
kind of squashed in history with various religions. Or they were burned at the stake, or the Gypsy women were considered witches, or whatever. So it's kind of curious to see, like even with Native peoples, how much in the spirituality is nature's incorporated.
Absolutely.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of read about that, and that's kind of like where my spiritual curiosity goes right now, is with what were these pagan ideas, and what did my ancestors do, and what does that mean? Um, so yeah, I guess it's important to ask the question rather than have the answer.
Well, yeah, and that is what sometimes we have to decide that, okay, do I really seek an answer? But the fact is that immaterial of that, once we know what our purpose is on this earth, then our life is accomplished, at least half of it. Then to implement that and once we realize what the purpose is and doing things towards that, is the other half. And
Yeah.
you're already on that path.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I think at different stages of life, perhaps, as our bodies change and our capacities change, sometimes the purpose changes,
True.
So,
It is ever evolving. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm also learned to be patient and understand that with myself, and try to listen, to, I believe I have a spiritual self. So it's just trying to tap into that and asking the questions, and knowing that part of me is always there to tap into. Not that it's gonna insist or force itself upon me. No, that's not the way it works. I have to be quiet and then ask. Is the way I look at it.
Very good.
And being in nature is one way of asking and being, calming down and being quiet and hearing what's going on.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now, as we come to the end of our show, is there something special you would like to share with our listeners? Anything that you would like them to know?
Um, hmm. Well, yeah. This probably sounds cliche and everybody talks about it,
Mm-hmm.
but um, about everybody having a phone,
Mm-hmm.
everybody being inside, everybody having a computer,
Mm-hmm.
social media, all of this. Um, it means so much to connect, not just with nature, but with other beings and with animals. And I would just say to give it a try and go outside, put the phone down.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you heard, get out, enjoy nature, have fun. I mean, if you go out and enjoy nature, you'll realize what the real joy is of being on this beautiful planet. So, thank you, Amanda Ball.
Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And thank you to our viewers who give us beautiful feedback on the topics that we bring to you, the wonderful people that we bring to you. And I'm grateful to all my guests, and especially today, Ms. Ball. Thanks to her. Until next time, have a great time and know that when you tune into our show, you're going to have a wonderful person who fosters positivity through the promotion of love